Hello and welcome to the last video in Unit 9. This is Section 4 and this is talking about the equation of a circle. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be able to identify the center and radius from an equation of a circle, including equations given in general form. We're going to determine the equation of a circle and determine if a given point lies on a circle. So what I want to talk about first is the equation of a circle in standard form. Now it comes from this. X squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. Huh, that looks kind of familiar, okay, where the center is at the origin. Okay, so let me write here that the center is at the point 0, 0, and r is equal to your radius, okay? So and we'll kind of go over examples of how we get to know what our center is based on looking at the equation and what our radius is. Now what I want to talk about here is that how do we get this equation? Well, I want you to notice something. I want you to notice that you have a circle here, and it's plotted on a coordinate plane. Okay, so you have an x-axis and you have a y-axis. And now notice that, the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the outside is called the radius, right? Okay, that's your radius r. Now, the question is that at this point on the circle, there is some point x, y, okay? And so what I want to show you is that there is a horizontal value x, and there is a vertical value y. And this all creates a right triangle. And what do I know about a right triangle? Oh yeah, you guessed it. Homeboy's got a friend. Mr. Police has a friend, and guess what his name is? His name is Pythagoras. So if I were to write an equation for this, I would write out x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. And that's an equation for my circle, okay? And that'll, for any x value, any y value, we'll actually plug in a point somewhere along this circle. And so that's how we get that, okay? So when we have these circles, we can identify the center and the radius from them, okay? And they come in this standard form where you have x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared, and that's equal to r squared, okay? Where r is the radius and h and k is the center, okay? Now remember that if you look at this, h, k, these are opposite of what is in the equation, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is talk about, taking a couple of these equations and turning them in figuring out what the radius is and figuring out what the center is. So if I take a look at this equation here, okay, what I can gather is that I have a center of my circle is not at the origin, okay? But I want to talk about my radius first. Okay, now in order to get my radius, remember your radius is squared. So to figure out what your radius is, I have to take this value over here and take the square root. So my radius is equal to the square root of 25, which is equal to 5. Okay, so my radius here is 5. Now my center can be determined by these 2 points here. Okay, so what I notice here is that if I were to look at x plus 3, okay, my form says that this is x minus h, okay? And so h, the value of h, is actually opposite of what the sign is here, okay? So if I were to identify what my value h is, if I have x plus 3, h is equal to negative 3, okay? And then if I were to look over in this part of the equation, figure out what my k value is, okay, even though it says that it's negative 4, it's going to be opposite of that. So my k value is just equal to positive 4. All right, so whenever you're looking at these equations, you have to do what's the opposite of what the sign is, and that's the value. So my point, hk, is the point negative 3, comma 4, and that's it, okay? All right, let's take a look at the next one. The next one, my radius, remember I have to take the square root of this value to the right, okay? So my radius is actually 19, or I'm sorry, the square root of 19. We're just going to leave it like that. Okay, we can't evaluate the square root of 19. We can't simplify it, so we're just going to leave it like that. Okay, and then identifying our h value. Okay, if there's no plus or minus anything, then I just automatically know that h is equal to 0. Okay, and I get that from here. All right, to figure out what my k value is on that point, that means that my y value for that would be k is equal to -7. Remember, it's the opposite. So my point would be of the form 0, -7, and that's my point. All right, let's take a look at the next one. And so let's go ahead and write the equation of a circle with the center of -7, 6 with a radius of 4 units. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to write out the standard form. I'm going to write out x minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared, and that's equal to my radius squared. Okay, so my center, what I can gather from this is that h is equal to -7, okay, and then k is equal to +6, okay. So when I take these values and I plug them into the equation up top, all right, kind of watch what happens. I'm just going to plug them in just as I see them, and I'm going to get the equation x minus -7 quantity squared plus y minus 6 quantity squared, and that's equal to, and I have a radius, my radius was equal to 4. Okay, so I'm going to take this value here, plug it in for r, and I get 4 squared. Okay, now let's simplify this. If I take x minus -7, I'm really going to get x plus 7 quantity squared plus y minus 6 quantity squared, and that's equal to 16. All right, and that's my equation in standard form. Okay, notice what happens. Notice how you had x plus 7 here. That's because when h is -7, you plug it into this formula, and you have to add -7, it turns it positive. Okay, and k is equal to 6. When you plug it in for k here, you subtract it. That's why it's opposite. Okay, so that's how I obtained those answers on the previous questions here, just by looking at those equations. So you have this to kind of look at as well. All right, so let's do the same thing, but let's do it by looking at a graph. Now what I want to do is identify my center. Okay, so it says write the equation of a circle shown in the graph. Now what I need the center, okay, and that's hk. Okay, I need the radius, r equals what, and then I need to put that into my standard form. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared, and that's equal to your radius squared. All right, so let's go ahead and identify what our center is. Now our center is this point here in the middle, okay, and that's the point, my center is the point -3, -2. Okay, so I found my h and I found my k. Now let's find the radius as well. Now the radius, you can kind of go in any direction, either vertically or horizontally. I know this is a length of 2. Okay, going from -3 to -1, that's a length of 2. Same thing over here. I can go vertically. Going from -2 up to 0 is a length of 2 as well. So our radius is 2. Okay, so a radius is equal to 2. Center is equal to -3, -2. Okay, now what I can gather from this is that my h value is equal to -3. Okay, that's that value here. Okay, and then the k value is equal to -2. Okay, and I get that from here. All right, so because I have those two numbers already, I'm just going to plug those in, and I also have the radius. I'm going to plug that in too. So I'm going to plug it into my standard form. I get x minus h, which is -3, quantity squared, plus y minus k. Okay, k is equal to -2. All right. So y minus -2 squared, and that's equal to my radius, which is 2 squared. Okay, so let's simplify this a little bit. So I've got x minus -3. That's really x plus 3. Okay, quantity squared, plus then y plus 2 quantity squared, and that's equal to 4. All right, and that's my equation, and that's all I need to do. Okay, so all right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so I want to write an equation given the center and a point on the circle, okay? So now my center is the point 1, negative 5. So I'm going to write that down here, that my center is the point 1, negative 5. And what that means is that h is equal to 1 and that k is equal to negative 5. All right, so I have those values. Now I know that the point passes through another point on the circle, is the point 3, negative 8, okay? So if this is my center and this is a point on the circle, what I can do is I can actually just go through and calculate the radius, okay? And we can do this a couple different ways. You could do it using the distance formula, or we could plot that point on a graph and see what we get. Let's go ahead and do that.